morning or afternoon. It's about 12 o'clock. It's been a long and a hot week here in DC, but today we have another exciting show for you today. I am Jada Ingleton, Washington Informer digital content editor, in honor and a privilege to fill in for our publisher and WIN TV host, Denise Rawlock Barnes, who is actually at the National Newspaper Publishers Association in Savannah, Georgia, alongside our managing editor, Misha Green. So they're holding it down for the Informer, along with a privy of our Black press newspapers. But today, while we are here on WIN TV, we have an important and enlightening program lined up for you as we shine a light on Uterine Cancer Awareness Month. So before we start today's pivotal conversation, I want to remind you all to pick up a copy of this week's issue of the Washington Informer. Normally, Ms. Denise is in the office, so she'll have it handy right there. But here's our digital edition if you haven't seen it yet. Great stories, upcoming events, things that you don't want to miss out happening in the DMV. And of course, become a subscriber to receive our publication directly in your inbox, along with our daily news updates on our WIN Daily newsletter. Another shout out to today's show. Don't keep it to yourself. Help us spread the word. Like I said, not only are we talking about Uterine Cancer Awareness Month, but we also have a really cool artist that we're going to be speaking to or showing a segment of things that are happening around DC that you may have noticed. So definitely spread the word on your social media channels. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, Threads, the whole but mostly YouTube is where you can find the link to this segment right after it airs. And moving forward, June is more than just a month on the calendar. It's a time for education, advocacy, and understanding as we focus on uterine cancer, which happens to be the most common gynecologic cancer in the United States. If you didn't know, African-American women are disproportionately affected by this disease. They're not only more likely to be diagnosed, but they face higher mortality rates compared to their Caucasian counterparts. So this stark reality demands our attention and our action, which is why I'm truly excited to welcome Dr. Ebony Hoskins today, a highly respected gynecologic oncologist at MedStar Washington Hospital Center, and an active member of the Society of Gynecologic Oncology. I've said that word so many times, you would have thought I would have said it right the first time. But together, we'll explore the critical importance of awareness, early detection, and the resources available for women at risk. And after that conversation, and before closing out our show, I would like to share a recent conversation that I had with an incredibly talented artist, Nate Langston Palmer, a Washingtonian, who earlier this week shared some insight on his project that's going on through the end of September, Song of Suns. So it's a really dynamic public art installation, powerful representation of the rich culture and creativity here in DC. And I'm sure some of you may have noticed, but maybe not even noticed what you were looking at. So it's basically a spotlight on a Washington, DC dance group of young Black men specializing in a piece of DC culture, Beat Your Feet. So his work not only celebrates this vibrant part of DC history, but it speaks to the narratives of resilience and expression that define our community, and also just highlights something pivotal, that's mental health awareness and celebrating Black boy joy. So I can't wait for you all to see not only the installations, but to learn more about them. And before that, like I said, we'll have our conversation with Dr. Hoskins that you don't want to miss. So before we get started, let's watch our weekly news broadcast by Curtis Knowles.
This is WIN TV News, bringing you the news that matters. The Department of Housing and Urban Development will move its employees out of D.C. to Alexandria, Virginia, booting the National Science Foundation from its headquarters, officials announced on Wednesday. Government officials said it's the first major agency to relocate its headquarters as part of the Trump administration's effort to reduce federal real estate. HUD plans to move from its office on 7th Street in Southwest D.C. to 2415 Eisenhower Avenue in Alexandria, a building currently occupied by 1,800 employees of the NSF. HUD Secretary Scott Turner announced this alongside Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin and Michael Peters, the Commissioner of the General Service Administration's Public Building Service. It is unclear where the displaced employees of the NSF will be moved. However, Peters said that the GSA is, quote, committed to helping them continue to fulfill their mission. This past weekend, 40 young ladies between the ages of 14 and 18 took part in a program at the Prince George's County Fire and Rescue Training Academy to be trained as firefighters. Camp Embers was the brainchild of Prince George's County's first female fire chief, Tiffany Green. And over the 2-day camp, the ladies are being trained in cutting cars, search and rescue, putting on turnout gear, and going into the academy's burn building. Green commented saying, quote, that they're also learning EMS skills, CPR, as well as first aid. And this is the third free Camp Embers to be hosted by the Prince George's County Fire Department with over 30 instructors. For the past few days and days to come, outreach specialists in DC have mobilized to provide resources to the homeless population of the city that face the brunt of the heat dome that is affecting the eastern U.S. The teams of outreach specialists monitored areas where those who are experiencing homelessness are known to congregate. And one such team circled Union Station on Wednesday in search of people who might be in distress from the heat. DHS coordinates with a number of agencies in the district, including Homeland Security and the Emergency Management Agency, in activating cooling centers across the city during heat emergencies. DHS is also critical in arranging transportation with the DC Department of Transportation for individuals who want to go to a cooling center but do not have a reliable transportation.
Thank you so much for that, Curtis. And now let's dive into an important discussion about uterine cancer. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Ebony Hoskins.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Dr. Hoskins?
I am doing well. So glad to be here.
Absolutely. And we appreciate you coming. I mean, this is a conversation, even from our preview, there's a lot of things that women and people around the world just don't really know about uterine cancer. So I hope that we'll be able to dive into a lot of different areas from your expertise and just things that are important, particularly here in the district.
For sure.
Absolutely. So, well, first, can you just, exactly tell us what is uterine cancer and how common is it?
Well, uterine cancer. So mainly what we're going to talk about is uterine cancer, which is cancer of the uterus. And most of the cancers, they're coming from the endometrium. So that's the lining, or the same lining a woman would have her menstrual cycle and bleed. And then there's a rare type called a uterine sarcoma, and that's a cancer of the wall of the uterus. So the most common is endometrial cancer. We're putting them all together in the name of Uterine Cancer Awareness. In terms of the number is rising. We anticipate over 69,000 women will be diagnosed throughout the United States this year. This year, 2025. And a small portion of that will be patients who have uterine sarcoma. So when you look at the grand scheme of things, not a large number. When you nail down who's getting it and who's affected, it becomes higher.
Excellent. So, I want to go to one thing that you mentioned, that uterine sarcoma, because earlier it was realized like that is a common misconception that some people are kind of confused about what exactly is uterine cancer and what isn't. So can you tell us, just in general, maybe some misconceptions that you think people commonly hear, especially women, when they think of uterine cancer?
So I think uterine cancer, they think fibroids, leiomyoma, which are benign, non-cancer tumors. There is a rare, less than 1% of what is thought to be uterine fibroids that could be a sarcoma, but most likely, in terms of numbers, it's a benign tumor. Mm-hmm. I think what I definitely want to relay today is that the lining of the uterus is where the numbers are, and it is not related to uterine fibroids. It's not related to endometriosis. It is really the lining of the uterus that can develop a cancer, which we call endometrial cancer. And that is a type of uterine cancer. So probably most of the statistics that we're talking about today will be heavily talking about endometrial cancer, that lining.
Okay, interesting. So what are some of the warning signs that women should be vigilant about?
Right. So number one, there's no screening test. So there is no screening test for uterine cancer. Most women who are diagnosed after menopause. And I think I need to define what menopause is, because most folks don't know. So menopause is when a woman has not had a period for an entire year. The average age in America is, say, 52, 53 years old. So that's where a large amount of women will be diagnosed after menopause. Any bleeding after menopause is not normal. Let me repeat again, not normal. So if I'm saying this not just as a patient, but your sister, your cousin, them, talk about having bleeding after menopause, it's not normal and it should be seen. That's one of the first signs. Now, it doesn't mean because someone is having bleeding after menopause that they have a cancer, but what it should prompt is that they should be seen. Sometimes there are things what we call endometrial polyp, could be a benign growth of the lining. Sometimes it could be something that is a pre-cancer. I hate using that word because guess what people hear? Cancer. But they other types of issues that goes on that could be something before a cancer developed. And then sometimes, of course, we want to make sure it's not a cancer. So any bleeding after menopause should be evaluated by a gynecologist, or at least prompted to the primary care doctor. Women before menopause can get endometrial cancer, and those signs are a little bit harder because they could have ultrasound that shows uterine fibroid, but heavy bleeding, abnormal bleeding, things like that should get evaluated and make sure there's no abnormal cells that are growing.
Interesting. So my question now, in terms of, maybe there is a correlation, I'm just thinking of there is with UTIs. Are UTIs a sign in any way? Or
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. Okay, so let me go ahead, and I'm about to school you, if that's okay.
School me.
Uterine cancer, we think and we know, is correlated with too much estrogen. Okay. Too much estrogen can occur if someone is the biggest risk factor in America. Why the numbers are going up? Guess what else is going up? Obesity. So obese women can still make a type of estrogen. It's not necessarily from the ovary, but a type of hormone that's very similar to estrogen that can stimulate the lining and cause overgrowth. And that overgrowth those cells can change. So obesity, women who may have taken, say, estrogen replacement therapy without a counterbalancing hormone called progesterone. Sometimes some women are taking medications for breast cancer, such as tamoxifen. That's also another estrogen. PCOS. So someone who has abnormal cycles and PCOS is too much estrogen. That is probably the biggest factor. And then I think I have to go ahead and say that there are some people who have genetic increased risk. So things that are associated with colon cancer called Lynch syndrome. I mean, I don't want to be like into the sciences of it, but I do want to make sure that our viewers know, kind of what's going on and what the risks are.
And I think it's very important to get into the sciences, because a lot of times we hear the words and they either sound scarier than they do, or just because we don't know what they mean, we don't realize what they're connected to. So by all means, feel free to school us.
Look, this is what we do all day long. So yeah. I think, in terms of like what I feel like I'm on here to let you know the data, the numbers on the rise, the risk factors, endometrial cancer. And in particular, our audience is primarily Black or African-American. They may identify, and obviously others are there, but the women who are being diagnosed, we're diagnosed similar rates as white women, but we're dying double the rate. And so, I always look at it and I'm like, why? And I don't think we have all the answers. I think I do see that Black women are diagnosed with more aggressive subtypes. And a more aggressive subtype typically have a higher risk of having advanced disease or metastases.
So is there anything specifically in terms of lifestyle changes or just things that women do or can't do that may help lower the risk of developing uterine cancer?
Well, I mean, look, some of it we may not know, but I think keeping a healthy weight, right? So if we know that obesity, that's some things that we probably can do. If we know obesity is a factor, keeping a healthy weight, keeping a healthy, hypertension, diabetes obviously is associated with obesity, but a healthy lifestyle and weight. Going to the doctor and being aware and being vigilant. If there's a family history of cancer, and it may not just be endometrial cancer, colon cancer that we are acknowledging, and now we have genetics testing that we could do and delve into and actually help prevent. So there are some things that we can do. Again, there's no screening test, meaning there's no test that we can take to prevent the diagnosis. But, there are some things, measures in terms of healthy lifestyle that I think we can do.
Excellent. And how does, tell me about the Foundation for Women's Cancer. What kind of work do you all do sort of in this field and preventing or helping bring?
Well, we're doing some of it now. So the foundation, I am a member of the Society of Gynecologic Oncology, which is, I believe it's over 33,000 members worldwide. And we take care of women with gynecologic cancers. Our nonprofit organization is the Foundation for Women's Cancer. And our goal is for advocacy, education, which we're doing right now, and then research. And so some things that we're doing, I think that we're doing a great job of trying to get the word out, right? Like we're talking and having this discussion. You've never heard of it. We're doing our job now. And then, in September, we'll have a couple events coming from the foundation. And one is a big race run to help raise funds for research for gynecologic cancers. That'll be here in September. I would love for you to invite me back in case to talk about that. But anyway, you like that invite that we?
Yeah. I did. Like shameless plug. We're not mad at it.
That little plug in. But anyway, so I think that we can do a better effort and an even better effort in marginalized communities, because that's who's affected more.
Excellent. And beyond even, the foundation and, of course, the Society of Gynecologic, I'm glad I said that word right this time, Oncology Center. What other support is available for facing these challenges?
Well, I mean, there is a organization called ICANA. That's kind of off the ICANA is for Black women with uterine cancer. It's a support group that meets virtually. And I think the other thing that we want to know, there's more work trying to be done on understanding the why of why this cancer is developed, why Black women are affected more. What can we do? I think we need more money and research and an effort, like actually bringing it, as an effort to study it and bringing the information out so we can help save lives.
And do you have maybe an idea of, even though this is one of the commonly most diagnosed cancers, but there is so much misunderstanding and misinformation surrounding it, and particularly within the community it affects. Why do you think that is?
Gosh, I just think right now we're in misinformation phase, right? Like I see lots of patients where they will get their information not from the doctor, and it's not just patients all over, really, quite honestly, that don't get the information for the folks like me that have taken our entire life, if you will, maybe half of it, getting the education, that they will rely heavily on internet. And I think internet is potentially a good resource, but I've even had folks that said, no, I get my info from TikTok. And I'm like, okay. So some of it is that. Some of that is a historically mistrust in the medical community, particularly from marginalized. I mean, we have the Tuskegee event. That stuff it carries on throughout. Then we have systemic racism. I mean, we have a lot of topics that we can approach into. And I mean, I don't know if we want to go there, but there's lots of reasons, I think.
Absolutely. And of course, we have, a follow-up question from one of our viewers that wants to confirm, are there symptoms other than bleeding for uterine cancer?
So I've seen some where you may not have any symptoms, right? It may be an incidental finding on an imaging if someone got an ultrasound or CAT scan. I've seen some women have pain, pelvic pain, but probably the most common is bleeding.
Most common is bleeding. So and to clarify, if you don't have a period, like in just the sense of maybe birth control or anything like that, how does that kind of tie in?
How does birth control tie into endometrial cancer?
In the sense of like when you may not be getting a period, but it's not necessarily like menopause, if that makes sense.
Right. So like, again, majority of women are going to be diagnosed in menopause.
And okay.
If someone's not having a period and they're premenopausal, gosh, that's definitely needs to be addressed by their gynecologist, and we have to consider other things. Sometimes it's hormonal, sometimes it's there's a slew of things, but I think if I don't say one thing at a time, it would be, seek a GYN provider, seek a primary care provider. If you feel like you're not getting the answers that are needed, seek care elsewhere.
Okay, thank you so much. And is there anything else that you want to bring to this conversation that we haven't talked about or that wasn't asked?
No, I think the biggest thing is that, one, seek care. GYN care, we think even probably a little bit, not better, but some docs don't even, or providers don't even do pelvic exams. We think it's important to do pelvic exams. We think that when things don't feel normal, it's okay to share that or to seek it out. I think, understanding that there are resources in the community to find out more information about this, such as our foundation and others, family history, get it checked out, get tested. And we would love to see you guys join in September 14th for our walk to end women's cancer. So it's a run walk to end women's cancer. More to come for that.
And we will definitely have you back on to talk more about the event and maybe dive into some of those areas we didn't touch too heavily on today. But I think it's absolutely important conversation, a continuous important conversation. And, I would love to hear a little bit about the research behind, or first what I wanted to ask even from earlier, what kind of brought you into this field yourself?
Honestly, as I knew I wanted to go into medicine, but I did we do rotations, and I felt like the patients I saw needed a physician that was more of a patient advocate. At that time, I think it was more patriarchal, meaning more men in the field, and the patients kind of went along with what they said and not really could see what the patient wants. So yes, we are going to recommend things, but kind of tailoring the care towards a patient. And really the idea of I operate, so I'm a surgeon, I give chemotherapy, and we also do research. So when you speak on research, we are working on trying to improve things. So we have clinical trials at my local institution, but then as the foundation, for example, use any monies that's raised towards researchers that may be doing trying to study why Black women, for example, have worse cancers.
Excellent. And I know you mentioned before that here in the district, there's particularly drastic statistics when it comes to that. Can you share a little bit of light about that as well?
Right. So my colleague, and she dug into the statistics. Now we know DC is not a state, but it's the district, right? So DC has the highest incidence rate. DC has the highest incidence rate of uterine cancer, and particularly for Black women. So when you look at numbers, I think it's 36.8 per 100,000 women. That's in the district. And then in terms of death rate, I always have to kind of go back to it. So all women in uterine cancer, DC has the highest rate from endometrial cancer in the nation. And for Black women with uterine cancer, DC has the highest death rate from endometrial cancer in the nation. And then for white women in DC, it's 30th in the nation. So there's definitely a gap, which you may hear is disparity.
Oh my gosh. And is there anything pointing to why that is, at least specifically here in DC? We're talking about Black and white women in the exact same region, but that's an entirely different.
Right. You heard the number. So remember and initially in our conversation, we were talking about what types, right? So literally, I'm a real living example. I used to work in Montgomery County doing the same thing. And I would say I saw more white patients, more white women, and they had endometrial cancer, but it was the lower stage, the better behaving type. Moved my practice to DC. I saw more Black women. They had endometrial cancer, but it was a different type. And the type they had was the more aggressive subtype. I think sometimes it's access to care. So maybe someone has insurance, but then getting into the doctor to be seen, getting that appointment. By the time they get it, some of it may be some misinformation. And then there's some studies that say even when we control for the tumor type and the socioeconomic type, there's still a gap in what patients, their outcomes are. So that's the part that I'm trying to understand. I don't know the answer to it all, but trying to understand. This is certainly not the topic for time, but initially it was thought, well, maybe the perms will call. And then I really kind of didn't buy it, but that is a difference between Black women and white women. Even if you control for the same resources, there are some things that we do differently. So I think that requires more work. I'm not going to say at all that that is a cause. Could it be probable? Sure. We need more data on it. And I don't know who is going to invest in that to look at it. That's going to be like who is going to invest the dollars to look into that.
Absolutely. Wow. That's heavy. That's a lot.
What if you working it every day?
But no, yeah, I can only imagine. But
You're
very
right.
important work that you're doing, and bringing awareness to our audiences. We're happy to have you on as much as possible to shed light on this topic. So thank you so much. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for the work that you guys are doing at the Foundation for Women's Cancer as well. By all means, like I said, everyone, please check out these links down here, and circle back to this segment to pick up on some things that you might have missed that Dr. Hoskins has enlightened us with today. And like I said, she will be back. Yeah. She will definitely be back before the event in September. Remind us of the dates again.
September 14th. Look, I think it's on a Sunday morning. It'll be down there. I think Pennsylvania Avenue. Yeah, I was just trying to remember it's right next to the Ronald Reagan Band. My brain right now is, but anyway, it'll be downtown, 5K walk or run. It'll be a great time and opportunity to meet folks, to learn more, to raise funds for research.
Excellent. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Hoskins.
Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. Before we officially end our wonderful segment today, we do have another, like I said, upcoming segment featuring Nate Langston Palmer, a DC artist whose beautiful dynamic art installation has been all throughout DC, starting in May and going through the end of September. But of course, I want to shout out Dr. Hoskins again. I learned something from that conversation, and from the viewers, I can tell that other people were picking up on things they didn't know as well. So it's very important to be aware of these things, not just this month, but year round, because these sort of things affect us no matter what month it is, no matter what time, and clearly no matter what age. So before we get into our last segment of the day, I want to remind everyone that next week we will have a very special broadcast to help you navigate the upcoming Ward 8 elections. So please make a note. Our airing for the special episode will be on Thursday, July 3rd. Going in a new month, Thursday, July 3rd at noon, as opposed to our usual Friday slot. So be sure to tune into that. And also check out, again, our digital edition. We've been staying very up to date, giving you Ward 8 profiles on the candidates. So definitely check those out. Learn what the different issues at stake are. And mark your calendars and join us for that essential conversation next week. But until then, stay engaged, keep the dialogue alive, and tune into this exciting conversation with local artist Nate Langston Palmer. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon. My name is Jada Ingleton. I am a WI content editor here today to introduce our final guest for today's Let's Talk. And we're going to be having a very interesting conversation, some of which you might have already seen but not known what it was. So I have the pleasure of talking to Nate Langston Palmer as he gives us a preview of Song of Sons, which is a very immersive, beautiful art installation taking place here in DC. Let's check it out.
I think a big part of the process of actually creating the artwork is just being able to spend time with people and just be yourself and just not have it all be about photographs, to be able to think about the relationships that you're really establishing with people, because at the end of the day, that's what it's really about. And that's the only way that you're going to get something that you feel is worthwhile and beautiful.
Joining me now, we have Nate Langston Palmer, the man, the myth, and the legend behind of what you just saw. Hi, how are you, Nate?
I'm great. How are you, Jada?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining me on. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, I personally have tons of questions. I am not a native Washingtonian, so I'm totally new to Beat Your Feet. And I've noticed these installations myself, even prior to today's conversation. So why don't you tell me a little bit about, the backstory? I know it's a project that initially started in 2019, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. So I first started photographing this project in 2019 when I met a group of the dancers in Columbia Heights. So I grew up kind of all around in different places around DC, but moved around DC as a kid. But one of the main neighborhoods I grew up in was Petworth, like right between Petworth and Columbia Heights. So I had just moved back to DC after a few years of being away, and I was walking around in the Columbia Heights area, down by the Target and all the stores down there, and I saw a few of the dancers just dancing outside the Target, and I started taking a few pictures, and switched contacts with some of the dancers, sent them the photos, and then ever since then we've stayed close, we've stayed in touch, and yeah, we still shoot together. We still hang out whenever I'm in DC, and yeah, so the project is definitely ongoing, but it's been something that has over time has changed a lot, has taken on new forms, and has lived a few different lives since it started. Um, yeah, so there's a lot to it, but it was back in 2019 when I first really started the project, when I first met the dancers.
So let me ask you, is it like every year when it's time to put out the installations, is it the same original photographs, or do you guys kind of do like some sort of updated versions? How does that part work?
Yeah, so I'd say there was a portion of the product where I was really where I was spending a lot of time photographing. Then there was a sort of a gap in the middle, in the past like 5-6 years. So that portion where I was really photographing for the first few years, that has been the work that we've really put out there the most, I'd say, at this point. Um, and that's the work that has fallen into like the exhibition that I had in DC in 2023, or this public art installation that we have up now in DC. But there is a lot of work that I have not shown, so last summer, sort of spring, summer 2024, I did a residency for about 2.5 months at the Nicholson Project, which is it's an arts organization in DC, and they have a residency program there that's really, really good. And if there are any artists out there who are from the DMV or have any sort of connections or ties to the DMV, I would really recommend applying to it. But it's because they give you a lot of resources. They give you a place to stay in Southeast. They give you a stipend that you can live on for the time that you're there, and really just focus on making your art. And I was really lucky because the project that I'm working on is a project that's based in DC. So it really gave me a home base for the time that I was spending in DC for those like 2.5-3 months. And I spent a lot of time working on the project during that time. And so I made a lot of work during that time that I haven't really shown a whole lot of, but I am currently working, seeing what the next life of the project is going to look like, and hopefully it'll be a photo book. I would love to turn the work into a book of photographs. So that's what I'm kind of saving that work for. But there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot more.
That would actually be beautiful, a photo book. That sounds so interesting.
Yeah.
So in terms of, I mean, I know you said you kind of stumbled on the dancers when you first came to this, but what does, beat your feet mean to you, even just beyond being someone that was born and raised in DC?
Yeah, there's like, I mean, on its surface, it's dance. It's a kind of dance. It's a kind of culture. And it's important just because like of the beauty of the movement, but on a deeper level, it is important because it represents a culture in DC that's unique to DC, that means a lot to people in DC, especially to people who are from DC, and yeah, it holds a lot of importance, and it holds a lot of significance, and it represents a culture that is not as apparent as it once was back in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. For the folks that are watching this that don't already know, go-go music is a kind of music that came from DC, and this is a kind of, and Beat Your Feet is a kind of dance that came out of go-go music. And so it's something that is really pretty specific to DC and hasn't really gone too far out of DC. So it's really important that we have these dancers who are, keeping that sort of dance alive and keeping that culture alive. And and just really just carrying it forward. A big part of what I've seen like working on this project is that there are a lot of young people who are interested in dance in DC, and who the dancers that are in the photographs, and a lot of other dancers who are who practice Beat Your Feet. They are doing the important job of teaching young people how to do this dance. And that's obviously, a really important part of it, because otherwise, who else is going to carry on the legacy of this sort of DC history? So yeah, I hope that answers your question, but really that's like one of the really that's one of the most important parts right there, is that this culture is being passed on, and it is really important to people. And there's a lot of new people who are coming into DC, and it's important that they learn that culture. That they come to DC and say, okay, this is a place where people have been for a long time. I'm not the first person to come here. I'm not gonna I don't want to impose myself on the people here who have their way of living, who have their way of communicating and expressing themselves, and who have their culture here. So I want to celebrate that too. Yeah.
I love that. No, that's absolutely true. And I love that, using art specifically as that form of, cultural preservation, and just also amplifying a broader message of just, Black boy joy and brotherhood. So can you talk a little bit about, how the arts can specifically have that lean of, focusing on a very local area, but still reaching a broader impact in its audiences?
Yeah, I'd say it's it's an important part of art in the first place, is to be able to it's a form of self-expression, and it can be used in different ways. Obviously, there are a lot of people. I mean, I think a large part of this work is aimed at sort of inspiring some kind of emotion in people when they see it, and to make people feel something. You might not know exactly where it's coming from, but to make people really feel something. That's a big part of the work. As an art project. But then there's this other side to it, which is sort of the combination of documentary work, which is I have more of a foundation in photography in the documentary area. But when you combine those two, it says something. I think it says something else, because you have this layer, sort of a documentary layer, where you're people are finding something out from looking at the work. Something real, something that's out there, something that this sort of dance that they might not have already known about. And there's also writing about the work that I've done, or just speaking about the work. There are important parts, like how the dance is done, the other kind of dances that they incorporate with the dance, or where this dance comes from, the music that it comes from, and all this stuff. But then you have this other side to it that's about Black boy joy, like you said, and seeing young Black men experience parts of life that we don't normally see. Experiencing joy, first off, which is great. We don't see that a lot, but also experiencing sadness or anger or things like that to other people out there feel like regular emotions. But when they see that in Black men, especially young Black men, they see it as dangerous or whatever it might be. But in reality, these are emotions that we all feel. Right. And they're important emotions. They're things that can be processed and can be
learned about and worked through. And so those are sort of things that I want to talk about and express in this project. And I think that to have these different layers of sort of documentary, the dance, and then we have, um, these emotions, and just thinking about, just Black men and how we see them, how we see black men in as a society, as a culture. And we have this layer that's about like, what does this work inspire in you? Like, what is the emotions that come out of it? And I think that, for any like successful art project or piece of art, it's, for me, it's really about the emotions that I feel looking at the work, um, on its deepest level, I think.
Excellent. So I'm curious to know, how did you choose where specifically to put your it's multiple installations, and even like a nightly video projection. So can you tell us, how did you decide where you wanted these photographs to be seen, and then talk about the video as well?
Yeah, so this was a big joint effort. There was a lot of pieces that came together and had to be coordinated. So I worked with the Nicholson Project to put this installation together. So it was originally like, I did this residency last year at the Nicholson Project, and they came to me and asked if I wanted to have my work submitted to the DC Arts Commission for this public art grant. And I said, of course, this is important work specifically to DC. So I thought it would be a great idea. And then from there, we kind of worked out the best places to have the work be seen, and, where the most people would be coming through, whether they're going to be downtown at work seeing the work up there, or whether they're going to be coming into DC seeing the work on the building like that. So this was a spot right here that was like, is a busy road of people coming into DC, and also people, it's across the street from Southwest Waterfront. So there's a lot of foot traffic, a lot of people who are from DC who, go there for whatever reason. There's also people who are visiting DC who are in that area. So we figured it was a great spot to have the most visibility as we could, and also and then we have a number of bus shelters that are around DC, and those are kind of leading from this spot where we have the big installation on the side of the building to the Nicholson Project, which is right across the bridge on like Pennsylvania Avenue, and so it was kind of leading there, so they're like breadcrumbs a little bit. But yeah, it's also a nice area where, nice space where people can, you might be on a bus route from one place to another and see a few like consecutive pieces of the installation.
I think I don't remember where exactly I was coming from, but I saw it one on a bus stop sort of area. And I was just like, oh, that's cool. Like, DC. I didn't realize like there was an actual like theme, that there was a whole, well, of course, the whole project, but then also just the importance that, it resonates with something that's a staple of DC.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. And I think, I want to ask you, what do you think? I know you mentioned wanting people to kind of get an emotion from what they see. What do you think it can offer, Native Washingtonians who might have grew up with Beat Your Feet the same way that you had?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I mean, first off, I want people to feel proud of the culture that we have in DC, and I want people to see that and feel like there's a piece of them represented there. I think the most important part to me, the most exciting part, definitely, of this to me has been to see some of the dancers see themselves like on that scale, like Donnie, who's on the side of the kid who's on the side of the building. That photo was taken, I think, when he was probably like 15 or so. or maybe younger, maybe 13 or so, 13 or 14,
Mm-hmm.
and he's 18 now. So he looks a lot different. But him seeing this photo up there, he was like, his reaction really touched me. Like I felt really that made me feel really happy, and that was definitely those were the best parts of this project, is seeing their reactions to it and seeing how it made them feel, and that it that it made them feel really proud of themselves and dance, um, and the fact that they're doing something really positive for the city, and really really carrying that culture on. I think, when it comes to dance, especially the kind of dance that they do, and public dance, and what seems kind of like a street dance, like when people see that on the street, they might look and be interested in it, but a lot of times there's kind of like passing by, that sort of thing. So it's really, I think it's like, to take a minute and be like, okay, hold up, this is really important. And to have this like up, on such a large scale, I think that was really cool to see. And I feel really grateful that they have, opened their arms to me as much as I have been interested in what they're doing. And in terms of everybody else in DC, I hope that, it gives people sort of, makes people feel a sort of pride in the culture that we have in DC.
Definitely. And speaking of that culture, one thing that's evident with this project is it's kind of like that multi-layer of culture. You're seeing the artistry from your photography, you're seeing the dance, and even just the music that you mentioned stems from go-go. So can you tell me, how have you kind of seen that need sustain or increase since you first started the project, in terms of, highlighting that cultural scene and significance that we have here in the district?
Yeah. I mean, so it's DC has changed a lot since I was a kid, and also the neighborhood that I grew up in has changed a lot over time as well. And when I come back to DC and to visit, it's always a little bit different, and some ways that are positive and some ways that are not so positive. And and I see a little bit less of this stuff that we're talking about, this sort of culture, every time I come back to DC. And so I think it's part of, like, it's a little bit, I think it's a little bit of like a pushback, a little bit of let's like do something to counter that sort of the displacement that we see in DC. A lot of people are obviously, with gentrification, a lot of people are leaving the city, and with that displacement comes the displacement of the culture that people carry with them. And so it's important to keep that alive. And so that's why I think that this project is kind of urgent at the moment, because we do, like, that is a culture that is like being pushed further and further into the background as the years go by. And so I really, that's like definitely an important part of the project, an important part of the public art installation, is to sort of keep that going in spite of gentrification, in spite of displacement.
Excellent. Well, I would love if we could pull up these images again so everyone can get a taste of what they will be seeing until September. Is as long as the installation will be out, correct?
Yeah, September 28th, I believe.
Awesome. So is it around the same time every single year? Well, like,
so this is a one-time thing so far. So it's up until September 28th. So go see it if you can. But there's like different, like I said, there's like this product has lived multiple different lives. So so whatever opportunities come up next, I will be sure to put out there. And they will always revolve around DC. So there'll be chances for everybody in DC to see the work, definitely.
Well, this is so exciting, and definitely we would love to follow up with whatever the 2026 version of Song of Sons looks like. But thank you so much for joining us today, Nate. Thank you for sharing that beautiful art with us that I hope people will start paying more attention to in those breadcrumbs.
Yeah. Thanks, Jade. I appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah. My pleasure.